everyone, I'm Stephanie, and welcome back to So Many Things. Exciting news, I'm using my new camera today. On the sewing side of the house, we're going to be making a reusable tote bag today. So that is extremely exciting for me. I love having just a cloth bag around the house to throw things in if I'm going here or there. Heading to the grocery store, I know I have enough bags to carry all my groceries home and that they're all the right size. So this one should give us a nice size. It's also a great size for just like carrying as a purse if you have children and you know that you always have, a few of their things along with your things that you're carrying to and from. And you don't need the large diaper bag. It's a great size to just throw your wallet in, your keys, a few of the kids' stuff, and off you go. I've simplified things a little bit today. I've already gotten the pieces cut out, but you will quickly see an image with all the sizings that you require, and I'll also have them down in the description so that if you miss them in the video that you can catch them down below. Let's get this bag pieced together. So you should have all these pieces cut. We have the two lining pieces, the two main outer bag pieces, the bottom piece, and then two strap pieces. I also took the scrap that was left from cutting my two inner pieces, and I'm going to create like a little cell phone pocket or a little handy pocket on the inside for something that's like quick to grab. So we're going to start with our straps. So here is our strap piece. All we're going to do is fold it in half and then give it a quick pin all the way down the length. We'll do this for both straps. And then we will take it over to the sewing machine and sew it up using a 1/2 inch seam allowance. Now we're only going to sew up this pinned side. There's no need to do the two end pieces. These two pieces will be tucked into the seam with the bottom portion of the bag. So there's no need to finish those two. This will also ease the turning process as we'll have two open ends to be able to work with. Almost got this one pinned. We'll take it over to the sewing machine and we will do a 1/2 inch seam allowance standard straight stitch. Gotten the two straps done. Now to unpin and turn. This may take a few minutes, but I will show you a very cool tool that you can use. If you don't have this tool, that's okay. A safety pin will work as well. So I've purchased one of these elastic puller thread turners. I can never remember the real name for these things. There will be a link to it in the description below. So what you do is you connect it. There's like a little hook on the one end. You connect it to the one end and then you just run the rest of the loop right over top of it. Till you get to the other end. And there you go. You can do this with a safety pin as well. It'll take you a little bit longer. But like I said, it's super easy. So there's a little clip at the end. You latch it on, and then you just pull everything over top. Once you've got it through, turn it on inside out. So now we are going to have to take these over to the iron and iron them out so that they're nice and flat. I would choose one side or the other for the seam to be on. I wouldn't try to put it like in the middle or anything. I would just choose one side, and then when we go to assemble the bag, we'll make sure that either our seams are both in or our seams are both out. That way it looks the same on both sides. So I am off to the iron and I'll be right back. All right, so at this point is where we're going to attach our straps to our front and our back, I guess, of our outer bag. So we're going to measure 4 inches in from the side. I'm just going to place my ruler here. And we're going to lay our strap with about a 1/4 inch or so hanging down below so that it gets sewn into our main seam. And we're just going to tack this in place. Actually going to switch this around. I would like my seam on the inside, or facing the inside. So again, 4 inches in from the outside edge of the outer piece, and we're just going to tack our strap on. Now it's going to go up and around and then back down this other side. So measure again, 4 inches on this other side. Make sure that your strap kind of goes up and around and your seam comes back down the same way on this side. So this side my seam is on the inside. So this side my seam is going to be on the inside. Again, about a 1/4 inch or less hanging over so that you make sure that that gets tied into that bottom seam when we get to it. And then we're just going to tack it in. We're going to do the same thing to both sides. Once you have both front and back done, we're going to take it back to the sewing machine and we're going to sew these down. So we're going to sew all the way up, and we're going to turn around at 1.25 inches from the top. That way when we go to sew our lining to our main front bag piece, that our strap is not sewn all the way to the top and we can't get that sewn in. So I'm going to mark this with a little dressmaker's chalk. See if my pencil will work for me today. There we go. So that's my reference line of where I need to stop and then turn around and head the other way. So again, 1.25 inches from the top. And I'm just going to draw a line. So I'm hoping you guys can see this. So I've done, it's approximately 1/4 inch from the side all the way to the top. And I switched my line to blue so that you could see it a little bit better. But I stopped 1.5 inches from the top. I went across and then I came all the way back down. I can zoom out a little bit. That's your front piece of your bag. So now let's attach the bottom. Alrighty, so we've got our front and I've got my back. And what we're going to do is take our bottom piece and do right sides together. Matching up that seam along the bottom. If you want, and you're finding the bag doesn't have enough structure for you, go ahead and use a lightweight fusible interfacing. So go ahead and sew this bottom line with a 1/2 inch seam allowance, and then we're going to repeat on the other side. I went ahead and ironed my seams. So I ironed towards the base or the bottom of the bag, just so that the lighter fabric on top, you wouldn't be able to see the dark gray come through or the extra layers. So I ironed it all down, and then I just did a gentle top stitch. Same seam allowance that we did on the handle, about a 1/4 inch, eighth of an inch, somewhere in there, across, just for one, to hold down our seam where we ironed it down, and for two, just to make it look a little cleaner, so that you see that beautiful transition between the bag bottom and the bag top. Our next step is going to be to sew this puppy closed so that it actually looks like a bag. So we're going to match up our side seams this time. Paying close attention, you do want your bag bottom to line up. So I would suggest making sure you pin right at that location to make sure that that seam is going to be exact on both sides. So we're going to pin all the way down. And then over to the other side. There we go. So head on over to the sewing machine, same stitches everywhere else, 1/2 inch seam allowance, all the way up both sides. The next step is the tricky one. So what we're going to do is I just creased ever so slightly my bottom. When I had it laid flat, gave it a little crease across here, because you're going to want this crease to match up with this side seam so that we can square off the bottom. Just play with it ever so gently. And you should be able to feel it, because there will be like a little lump there where your seam is. So you should know where your crease is just by feel. Once you've got it laid nicely, you're going to take your ruler and you're going to lay this crease up one of the lines on your ruler, and it should measure 3 inches down from that line. We're going to draw a line across the edge of our ruler. And then pin this line so that it doesn't slide on you, because that will be your box corner for the bottom of your bag. We're going to repeat this on the other side. I've gone ahead and lined it up ahead of time. So all I have to do this time is measure it down my 3 inches, making sure that my line is still straight down that line where I creased, and then mark it off. Give it a pin, and then we're going to sew directly on that line. So now that we've gotten that sewn, we can go ahead and trim off the excess. So making sure that you're leaving your 1/2 inch seam allowance, so you're measuring a 1/2 inch away from the line that you just sewed, and then you can cut it off. There we go. Our outside of our bag is complete. So now let's work on the inside. So we'll just set this one aside. You should have two identical pieces for the inside. I've decided to add a little pocket. So what I'm going to do to one of these is just take this piece of scrap that I had left over, and I'm going to create a little pocket. So to save me from having to hem all four sides, I'm just taking the long piece that I had left over and I'm folding it in half. So this, I guess you should know what size this is because it wasn't in the description. So it's about 16 and a half by 7. So about 16 and a half by 7. So like I said, we're just going to take this, we're going to fold it in half. We're going to sew along 3 sides, leaving a hole for turning. And then we're going to give it a good press. And then I'm going to unpin before I trim my corners. So you want to debulk your corners a little bit. Those are the wrong scissors to be using. So we're just going to trim away our corners a little bit. That way when we turn it inside out, our corners aren't as bulky. Once you have all 4 corners out, take it over to the iron and give it a good press all over. What you're going to want to do at this point, because you know that you're going to be fitting a larger object in this pocket, it's going to need a few little pleats at the bottom to give it the extra room for that large item to fit. So what we're going to do at this point is we're going to create 2 pleats at the bottom. The size and direction is up to you. I usually go, I guess it would be considered a 1/2 inch pleat. So fold it over half and then back across. And you want to make sure that you've got this pinned both top and bottom. The only reason for this is when you lay it onto your backing piece and you stitch it on, you want to make sure that you're not overstretching the top. That way when you actually put the object in the bag, that there's still that room at the top of your pouch for it to fit. Got this one nice and straight. For some reason this one's not coming out as straight as I would like it. There we go. Okay. So we know that we need at least 1.25 inches at the top for attaching it to the front. So let's do 3 inches down from the top, and we're going to center it, eyeball it, into the middle of this piece. That way we know when we add the pleats to the bottom and the sides come up that our pouch is still in the middle and it's not happened to be on a corner. So that looks pretty good to me. So I'm just going to pin it roughly along this edge. And then we're just going to top stitch it on. We know that this pouch isn't going to hold a ton of weight. If anything, it's just going to be a cell phone or a set of keys, something of that nature. So it doesn't need an excessive amount of strength. But we do want to know that whatever we have in there is going to stay in there. There we go. So top stitch all the way around, 1/8 to 1/4 inch seam allowance around the edge. The remainder of this bag is going to be very similar to the outside that we've done. So we're going to lay the piece that we just created with the pocket down first, and then we're going to lay our second piece on top. This time around, we're going to do actually very similar to what we did with the little pocket. We're going to stitch along 3 sides, leaving a hole at the bottom for turning. Because we're going to leave the hole at the bottom here, that means that we can, when we attach this inside piece to the outside piece, that we can stitch all the way around the top of that top rim without leaving the hole there, that the hole will actually be in the bottom of the bag, so we won't see that final messy line of stitching. So for now, let's get this pinned together. There we go. Our next step is to square off the corners like we did on the outside of the bag. So let's get this unpinned. This should be easier this time as we'll have 2 seams to match up rather than an imaginary seam. So open up your bag. Line up your seams. An easy way to do them is lay them opposite. So if you're going to lay them flat, fold the one on the bottom one way and then fold the top one out the other way. That way when they butt, they'll create a little lip that they'll catch on to each other, and that way you know that you've gotten it right. Same as before, 3 inches down, straight down that line. Mark your line. Now don't worry if you've noticed I've been using blue dressmaker's chalk. This is all going to be on the inside of the bag, so we don't have to worry about the color of the chalk or any of that matter, because it's all going to be on the inside of the bag and nobody's going to see it. So let's get this other side done. Same as before, stitch right down your blue line and then trim off the excess with leaving your 1/2 inch seam allowance. Second last step to this bag. So we're not going to turn this one inside out or inside right like we did to this one, because we're going to take this one and we're going to shove it inside our lining piece. You always want to start with your side seams, match those up, and then move on to the in-betweens. That way you know that your bag is matched up side to side. There we go. You're going to want to make sure that your straps are tucked in, that they're not hanging out, because you don't want to accidentally sew over top of them. So now we're just going to go slowly all the way around. Pinning our front to our lining piece. Now remember, we left the hole under here. So we can take this to our sewing machine and we can stitch all the way around, not having to worry about leaving an opening for turning. So same as all our other stitching, 1/2 inch seam allowance all the way around. At this point we can go ahead and unpin. To get ready for turning. I didn't leave my hole quite big enough. I'm going to try and do this ever so carefully without ripping it. So you just want to grab the bottom of the bag out from in the hole and just tease it slowly. The hardest part comes when you're turning out the actual lining, because now it's turning in on itself. You should be able to just work it a little bit at a time, and it should come right out. So now we have to sew this hole closed. Some people would recommend hand stitching, but because it's on the inside of the bag, I would say a standard straight stitch, about a 1/4 inch, like you were top stitching, so about a 1/4 inch, 1/8 of an inch, as close to the edge as you can get, just to close up that hole, and that'll do. You'll never see it in the bottom of the bag. There we go, all closed up. Got one final step to this bag. It's a personal preference of mine, so it's up to you whether or not you would like to do this step or not. It's just top stitch this the top seam. So the hardest part here will be lining up your lining to your outside of your bag. But I would just say take it over to the ironing board, gently work it, and as you get a section done, iron it right away. Once it's ironed, it's set, so you know that it won't move. But I'd put a couple pins in there before you take it over to the sewing machine, just to make sure. Once you've got your top stitch done, your bag's done. This was such a quick and easy project that I'd love to... Thanks, Layla. Go away. This was such a quick and easy project, and I'd love to make some more. You can mix and match patterns and have a different look on every single bag. Say hello to my little sewing buddy tonight. Her name is Layla. She's been knocking around my camera all night. I hope you guys have had fun sewing with me this evening. Let's do it again. I have many other projects planned. If there's anything that you guys would like to see or would like help on sewing, let me know in the comments and I will do my best to get a video out to you. If not a video, definitely a comment back as far as how I can help you. And as always, please like, subscribe, and push that bell button for some notifications. And please join me on Facebook, as I post lots of great content there as well.